My name is Sheila Corona. Welcome back to A Soul's Journey by Peter Richelieu. For those of you who are following along with me, either on the free PDF, for which you will find a link in the Show More section, I am on chapter 5. I do, however, highly recommend that you obtain the book for yourself. It is available on Amazon. I found the odd thing is that it wasn't available originally when I first found the book, and now they're everywhere. So, um, if you are catching this one for the first time, you can begin at the first chapter. You'll find it all on this channel in a playlist entitled A Soul's Journey. So it begins. It was no use. Last night I made all my preparations and concentrated on seeing myself in a mirror, but this morning I remember absolutely nothing. I went to sleep almost as soon as my head touched the pillow, for I suppose I was tired after all the concentration on my report yesterday, and it seemed only a very short time before I awoke this morning, bright and early after a dreamless night's rest. Yes, not even a dream disturbed my slumbers, and I must say I'm disappointed, though possibly I was expecting too much. In an hour's time, my Indian friend will be here, and perhaps he will explain why I failed last night in such a dismal fashion. Just at 11 o'clock, as I was looking through my notes, uncertain as to what he would think about them, he opened the door. Obviously, he knew that I was a little excited, wondering whether I had failed to remember a lot about my astral journey, for his eyes twinkled as he asked me if my report was ready. He never seems to laugh, though his eyes often smile, and there is no doubt at all about his having a very highly developed sense of humor. Having read my notes, he complimented me on having remembered so much and said that for a first attempt it was distinctly above average. I asked him if I had forgotten much, to which he replied that I had certainly failed to notice quite a lot when we were under the sea. Also, I had not remembered much of what transpired when we were trying to help the young fighter pilot immediately after he had been shot down. These omissions were unimportant. The main thing that I had provided for myself, the main thing being that I had provided for myself, it is possible to remember what is done outside the body, and the perfecting of the quote bringing through process of the business was now only a matter of time and concentration. But why couldn't I remember anything this morning? He smiled as he pointed out that I must not expect to be successful all at once, and that I must be prepared for any disappointments. Yet, if I were really determined to succeed, he would help me in every way possible. He continued, "Your adventures of the night before last have made my task of describing the astral plane to you much easier than it was before, for now you know from experience something of what I have endeavored to explain to you in mere words. You have therefore learnt the lesson in what we call occult wisdom, which is that you must never believe in a credulous way anything that you are told." Now, that seems like a huge thing right there to me, because that's exactly the way I'm feeling in these moments of now. After 63 years on this planet, I now know that most of what I've been taught, told to believe is true, grow up thinking is true, isn't exactly the way it's been told, if at all. So I feel like that's a huge statement there. You must not believe it either, for that would be foolish. The only method to adopt is to accept as a possibility the things that you are told, then to set about finding out the way to prove those things for yourself, which is exactly what my quest and my journey is all about here now. And I highly recommend that kind of an approach to everyone because honestly, that is what's required to move into sovereignty, to take one's power back from having given it over in the first place, which is what we've all done on this planet, bar none, specifically where it comes to education. We've allowed someone else to tell us what is true and what is not because they have letters after their name and because they went to school and because. Now, what have we proved so far? That is where I wish to begin. You have proved that it is possible to have experiences apart from your physical body. You have proved that death is not what you thought it was. For you have seen your brother Charles, and you know that he is very much alive indeed, though invisible to you, whilst you are functioning in your physical body. You have talked to him, and this should be sufficient proof that he exists in a region where you can follow him at stated times. You are aware that although Charles still knows very little of the astral plane conditions, you could not honestly say he was suffering, nor that his life was a miserable one and something from which a man would naturally shrink. You therefore have taken one step towards getting rid of the fear of death, the fear which makes such a deep impression on so many men living in the world. Even from your present knowledge, you know that death is not the tragedy it is so often called, and that in some cases it might easily be considered not only a relief, but a great blessing. You have seen it for yourself that existence after death is to a great extent governed by the type of life lived in the world. You can appreciate that those who are artistically inclined or interested in one or another of the specific branches of art, such as music, painting, literature, or philosophy, or even those whose special interest is travel, are well catered for after death. On the other hand, you can also appreciate that those whose lives here are purely material, whose amusements and interests depend on the physical body, who primarily are drawn to sport, to good living, to forms of business which have as their goal the making of money, are going to find time hanging heavily on their hands after death, until they realize that they can develop new interests. I asked, quote, how can one develop? Oh, I see. This is back to Peter asking, how can one develop new interests after death? In the same way as you could have developed them during your lifetime, had you possessed sufficient leisure and the money to provide fees for the necessary tuition. At the astral level, although you have not yet seen them for yourself, schools exist because of the great need of training permanent inhabitants of the world in those interests which they lack for the life that is before them. These schools serve a dual purpose. They not only teach pupils all about conditions at the astral level and how best they can employ the conditions ruling there for their pleasure and education, but also provide courses of instruction in all the various matters for which physical plane conditions are not essential for carrying them out. Most of the true musicians, artists, philosophers, and those who were teachers or professors in the physical world obtain great joy from passing on some of their knowledge and experience to those who are lacking in it, but who are sufficiently interested to want to learn. The absence of the time factor, the absence of the necessity to sleep 8 hours out of the 24, again helps considerably. If experts in their particular subjects give even as little as 3 or 4 hours a day to training new students, The time given is in no way a hardship, for they still have the remaining 24 hours the remaining 20 hours out of each day for their own devices. In actual practice, it works out that many of these ex-teachers and specialists in their particular arts obtain so much pleasure from molding new material into form that they attach themselves quite voluntarily to these schools and often spend more than half their time at the astral level teaching others the rudiments of their arts, or in some cases helping those who have already developed some proficiency to become adepts under the concentrated tuition that is available in the astral world. Not only do these schools play a tremendous part in the life of the astral world, but they undoubtedly influence the future lives of their pupils. If at the astral level a man has developed a love of any of the arts or sciences, in his next life at the physical level, he is born with the desire to continue that study. And so we find children showing at an early age an enthusiastic aptitude for one thing or another, which perhaps is not in any way a characteristic of their parents. Such such leanings towards an art should always be encouraged. Parents often argue that this enthusiasm should be discouraged, as they themselves have managed to lead successful lives without such dabbling. This is a great mistake. However, and and if the parents perceived that the craving of the child is a perfectly natural one, that it is really only anxious to carry on with the training which was begun during its last astral carefree life, they would probably realize that such cravings should be encouraged and not squashed as so often they are. Again, I feel like that's due specifically to the programming and conditioning that we all have or that we all receive in regards to that, you got to make the money. Um, Both in this world and the next, we are all the time progressing and making our future lives happier and fuller. The permanent inhabitants find out these schools in different ways. The permanent inhabitants find out about these schools in different ways, and always at a stage when they are of most use. When they first realize that they are living in the astral world, it is quite useless to mention such things to them, for they will at once assure you that they have no desire to go to school again. They want to enjoy themselves. For the first few months, the opportunity of traveling around the world and seeing all the countries they had not had the chance of visiting whilst they were in this world usually satisfies them. You will remember that Roy Chapman, your brother's friend, admitted that at times he felt bored. He had done all these things. He had made a few friends, of course, and enjoyed taking them out to dinners and shows, to picnics and the like, but that palls after a time. Roy was a keen golfer in his lifetime, but golf is not as interesting, is not the interesting game in the astral world that it is here. Such a man as Roy will certainly tire of all the things that he has been doing for the last 6 months or so. And when he does, he will not hesitate to express his boredom to others whom he meets in the world. Then one day someone to whom he has been introduced will mention to him the opportunities that exist there for increasing one's knowledge or developing along a particular line of art or study. He will not be enthusiastic at first, but he soon will realize that learning something entirely new will fill in the long hours. Eventually, his interest will be aroused, and yet another will have passed from the stage of materialist to the life that makes our sojourn at the astral level all too short. There are others to whom these new interests have no appeal. They are usually the old married couples who have developed a taste for domestic life. All they ever aspired to was to have a home, a garden, and to live a quiet life amongst their friends. They liked to listen to the radio, have a television set, and such things. Their happiness is dependent upon being together. They can carry on this type of life at the astral level without any difficulty whatsoever. If the man dies first, he wanders around looking miserable and lonely at the hours when, when his wife is awake, and is there to meet her as soon as she gets out of her body at the time when she falls asleep. To suggest to such a man that there are schools where he can learn something is usually a waste of time. He scorns the idea. All he wants is a comfortable home with his partner. He sets to find out the ways and means of living in such a way as he and his wife will enjoy when reunited. He learns that it is simplicity itself to have a house and garden exactly in accordance with his own pet ideas merely by expressing a desire for such in thought. He finds the most beautiful spot available, and when his wife comes over, they build their dream house and furnish it exactly as they would have loved to do in the world had they had the necessary means to do so. Now a thought produces just the things they desire, and frequently they think of wonderful labor-saving appliances. Sometimes these are seen by businessmen who make notes of them, and in their next life they invent similar things. This old couple has an ultra-modern stereo set, and they create in thought the required number of servants to do their bidding. They create a garden with any form of flower or fruit in it that they would like. For here there is no limitation of climate. They entertain their friends, they enjoy showing off their inventions, and live very happily in the astral plane. Frequently they link up with pets they have had on earth, or adopt others. The blissful state of the elderly couple just described is not as general as might be supposed. Men and women marry for various reasons. Sometimes it is physical attraction which draws them together, sometimes wealth. Even loneliness plays its part in the linking up of individuals. It is very seldom that we see what we would describe as an ideal pair. Two people whose outlook on life dovetails, whose standing in evolution is similar, each having sufficient intelligence to be able to enter into the problems of the other. Such unions are rare and occultly are not to be greatly desired, as it is a good thing for an evolved man to be attracted in some particular way to a less evolved partner. When one hears such a remark as, quote, "What a pity John married Mary, so unsuited, don't you think?" one must realize that if the speaker had more experience, he would know that both these young people are destined to benefit considerably from the few years they spend together. The immediate outcome of such an apparently unsuitable union is invariably a series of difficulties for both parties. There is always a clash of interests. Possibly the man was originally drawn to the woman through her physical attractions. After a time, that, quote, draw becomes less, though it is unlikely that it would cease to function altogether. Then the two people are thrown back on companionship as the only bond to hold them together. But companionship is not easy when the tastes and desires of two individuals are dissimilar. In the case where the man is the more evolved of the two, His interests lie in books, in music, in the serious side of life, whereas the woman wants to go to any place of amusement where her friends of the moment are going. A clash of ideas results, and there are many arguments and disagreements. If there are no children, sometimes the marriage breaks up solely on account of the incompatibility of the temperaments. But it is a great pity when this happens, because it is through the inequality of the two people concerned that much knowledge and experience can be gained. The man has to learn a method of meeting his partner halfway. When he ponders over ways and means of doing this, he realizes that he must start by raising his wife's interests towards his educational level, at the same time making sure that she does not realize what he is endeavoring to do, or she will immediately develop an inferiority complex. He must learn to be patient when, through her inexperience, she presses for things he knows to be unwise or unnecessary. Knowing that to do so is wrong, sometimes he must give way in order that she may see the results of the mistake which has been made. The woman will not always wish to be led, even when subconsciously she realizes that her partner in life is wiser than she. If two such people can spend a lifetime together, the benefits to both are great indeed. For one will have had the advantage of a superior intelligence and a greater experience to guide her and develop her character, whereas the other has had to learn the value of patience, of tact, of the necessity to see things from another's point of view, a view which, through lack of experience, must be more limited than his own. After death, such people do not necessarily carry on their lives together. The man probably feels that he wishes to spend his time with greater minds than his own, whereas the woman, who for many earthly years has been forced to live at high pressure in endeavoring to produce a standard which was always something of an effort for her, now wishes to sit back and take things easy for a time. Usually, after a short period of relative inactivity, she finds that the seeds sown during her lifetime have now brought forth a strong desire to continue the development already begun. She finds out that she no longer derives complete satisfaction from the artificial enjoyments she once longed for and bullied her unresponsive husband to provide for her. Her mental appetite has been whetted, and she finds it impossible for her to go back to the standards which were natural to her at the time of her marriage on the physical plane. She will tell you that she did not have a particularly happy life, but now that is over. She will be glad that fate decreed that the experience should have been hers. It often happens that two people who have lived together for a whole lifetime do not contact each other again, either after death or in future lives. Each has served the other. Both have benefited by being brought together for a period of time, but their outlook on life is too different for either to be naturally attracted to the other. Now, I find that very interesting. Mostly because I feel at this point in my life, I feel like they're almost all the beings that I've encountered, I've either known in some way, you know, at some point in my existence. In such an instance, it is possible that the man had lived at least 50 to 100 lives more than the woman. Naturally, his understanding of the vast plan, quote, plan, would be greater than hers. His reservoir of knowledge and that accumulation of experience from past lives would be greater than hers. And in every way, he could be regarded as a superior being. But do not forget that 100 lives previous to this one, but previous to this one, he was in the same place as the wife of the moment, and he probably benefited from having been forced to spend a lifetime with someone much more highly developed than himself. You have probably heard it said that every person has what is known as a soulmate, and that you should always be on the lookout for such a person. It is quite true that soulmates exist, for originally, when the life force is sent out by the divine power, the force emerges into life as twin forms, one male, one female. Both these forms evolve quite separately, each having its quota of lives in male and female bodies. But on special occasions, when a great work has to be done, these two entities are sometimes brought together because the inspiration of the one enables the other to carry out the gigantic task which has to be accomplished. A great man who has achieved his goal has often said that he could never have done it without the help, the advice, and the strengthening power of his wife. This need not mean that they were soulmates, but it may mean just that. And when this is so, the two people seem to act as one great unit. They not only think the same thoughts, but they feel instinctively what is right for both of them. It is, of course, the perfect blending of the positive and negative, of the male and female in nature. It would not be a good thing for us always to have lives with our soulmates, for under such circumstances, we should tend to grow very selfish. We would never learn to see things from others' points of view, to deal with opposite ideas, to give way in order to achieve something rather than to stand firm and produce nothing. These illustrations give you some small idea of the way in which egos are assisted along their evolutionary journey. It is through difficulties such as having to live with individuals who do not synchronize in every way that we learn true tolerance. A pleasant and peaceful life is not necessarily the best life. We progress most quickly along the evolutionary path through suffering. And what often seems hard and ruthless methods. Each life is a day in the school of evolution, and if we are to carry out the purpose for which we were sent into incarnation, we cannot afford to waste any opportunities. Tomorrow I shall tell you a few facts about the non-human inhabitants of the astral plane, after which I shall take you for another astral journey, so that you may see for yourself that astral human beings conform to what may be described as the normal actions covering the individual concerned in the physical plane. And that's the end of chapter 5. I will return with chapter 6 in just a few moments. Be well, my friends.